Hello and welcome to Marks and Vincentielli, your go-to podcast for all things theater. I'm your host, Elizabeth Vincentielli, and I write about theater and many other things for the New York Times.
Yeah, and I'm the other guy on the podcast, Peter Marks, former theater critic for the Washington Post, and now I'm an actor. I'm saying it. I'm an actor.
Oh my God, I love it.
So somebody out there dispute it, but I am an actor. Anyway, today we welcome to the show one of our favorite writers, Gina Gionfriddo. Her comedy, Becky Shaw, premiered off-Broadway in 2009 and was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in Drama. And now, this spring, it's opened on Broadway, where director Trip Cullman's production has earned excellent notices.
And I would say well-deserved excellent notices. I really love the play and the production. It's a very sharp play, and it has not mellowed with age. And this production has a cast that really brings it home. It's also a very funny play, and this cast is very, very good at it. I'm going to name them all. Linda Eamon, Lauren Patton, Patrick Ball, yes, Dr. Frank Langdon from The Pit. Patrick Ball is in it. Madeline Brewer and Alden Ehrenreich. Why am I the one who has to pronounce their names? Because it's not going to come out well, but here I am. So Becky Shaw is largely based in Providence, and Gina has a great way to work in money and class in a very biting, very funny way. And we always remain invested in the character until the bitter end. It's just, highly recommend for this spring.
Yeah, it is the kind of play, Elizabeth, that makes you crave more of a canon from Gina. She went away from theater for a while and wrote for television, but she did write U.S. Drag and After Ashley in the early 2000s. Also, you might remember a play called Rapture, Blister, Burn, which came about 14 years ago. That was also a finalist for the Pulitzer. And then she wrote Can You Forgive Her in 2017. And, it's weird to say this, but Becky Shaw is Gina's Broadway debut.
It's quality over quantity with Gina, just kind of like us, quality over quantity. I am really admiring of the podcast. I can crank out like 3 or 4 episodes a week. Like, oh my God, how do they do it? I don't know. But we're like the Gina Gionfriddo of podcast. Whenever we come out, it's quality. So we're going to talk playwriting with Gina, of course, but also her TV career, because many of you, if you did not see one of her plays, you probably saw something that she wrote, because she was a pillar of Law & Order and Law & Order Criminal Intent for years. And that's really where she was when she was not doing plays. And, okay, drum roll, we're going to talk to her about her work on the upcoming adaptation of Silence of the Lambs. Yes.
Ooh.
She's writing it. She's writing the stage version of the Thomas Harris book. I know, right? It's going to be in England. I don't know. I find myself looking at flights to see how expensive it will be to see that. I'm dying to see that. We're really super excited to have with us today Gina Gionfriddo. Am I butchering your name as I am wont to do?
No. No, Gionfriddo.
Okay. It's great to have you on the podcast and back on a New York stage. It's been too long, almost 10 years, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe 10.
So before we get to Becky Shaw, I wanted to get a sense of who you are, because I think we need to reset you for our listeners. Again, almost 10 years since you've had a show, and you have not been very prolific, much to my personal dismay. So I read that you grew up in D.C., right? And you once described yourself as a macabre child, which I love. The idea of the macabre, like little Wednesday Gionfriddo, basically.
Yes.
Is that when you discovered that you were interested in writing, or did you took a kind of roundabout road to that?
I took a kind of roundabout road. I think I wrote for fun as a very young child. And then in high school, I got into acting, and I thought I wanted to pursue that in New York, but got off that track for a couple of reasons. And when I was in college, I did an internship at Primary Stages, which was then off Broadway.
Casey Childs.
Yeah. So I was, I was a fly on the wall for playwrights rewriting new plays. And I got very turned on by that. So started writing theater instead of acting it.
What were some of the playwrights who were there at Primary Stages at that point?
Oh my gosh, it was a lot of people Casey had worked with at New Dramatists, and I don't know. I mean, we did a couple plays by Stuart Duckworth. I don't know if that means anything to you.
Not at all. I have to say.
Yeah, Joe Sutton. I think David Ives was probably the one you would know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And what was like fascinating to you about, what was like turning you on about like watching playwrights at work, like, or a show coming together? What was interesting to you about that?
Well, I think partly what happened was I was at Barnard, and this was the late 80s, and I took an acting class at Columbia and, was told I was sort of too ethnic to play ingenues.
Wait, I'm sorry, too ethnic? Like, wow.
Yeah, totally. It was the 80s, you could say that. So, and I, in searching for stuff to work on, I not only wasn't finding stuff, but also was sort of feeling like I wasn't finding stuff that was very good. So I think seeing, writers working on plays in real time, I sort of started to think, I could write my own stuff. I could write my own monologues. Mm-hmm. And then I got off the acting track, but stuck with the writing.
Mm-hmm. So then I guess after Barnard, you went to Brown.
Yeah.
And that was like peak Paula Vogel Brown, right? When she was running that program.
Yeah. What happened was the other playwright that Casey produced several times was Mac Wellman.
Oh.
And I was at Primary Stages for years. I was an intern all through college, and then they hired me straight out of college. So I was there a long time. And in all those years, Mac was the only playwright who said, if you ever want to show me anything, I'd give it a read. And so I gave him something, and he said, you should go study with Paula. And he said, you got to do this. So he gave me a shove in that direction, and I'm so glad he did.
One of the hardest things, Gina, is getting people to read one's plays.
Oh my gosh, so hard.
I only know this firsthand because I recently wrote and finished one. And people say they really want to read your play. But the difference between saying it and committing to actually reading. And I think it's probably true of every kind of writing. I don't think it's just playwriting. But I wonder if you experienced that, that difficulty in getting people to believe they should read it, at some point.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I will say, I have a friend who's a novelist, and he will say, oh my God, my friends are asking me to read their novels. And, a novel's a commitment, but, a play is, it's a couple hours out of your life to read it.
Right.
I think what happens is I think that people feel you don't really just want them to read it. You want some career assistance. And that makes them very, squirrely.
Yes, I think that's right. Like, they think they have to have something brilliant to say, either to help you or to confirm what you've done. And it's a very big leap for people to make.
Yeah.
Well, there's also sometimes the tension that you don't want to have to end up, if you don't really care for it, like how are you going to say that?
Right.
It's very hard to come back and say, well.
Yeah, we'll let the critics weigh in. They'll decide whether it's good. No, but so how did you know, Gina, that you had the gene? Where was the first validation beside Mac Wellman saying, go study with Paula Vogel? When did you start to feel like a playwright?
So while I was at Primary Stages, I was at Barnard, and I was what they called a Centennial Scholar, and they gave me a little bit of money to do, to pursue whatever I thought my passion was. And so I used that to, gave Casey a little bit of money, paid some rent, and studied playwriting with him and wrote a play. And I thought I had written something good based on feedback from him. But I think getting into Brown was really, that was the big deal. That was the big deal because Paula was an idol at that point.
And you had this important mentorship. Mm-hmm. What was really valuable to you as a budding playwright to have in your corner? Was there someone or something, you've mentioned Casey, you've mentioned Mac, you mentioned Paula. Was there somebody who really cemented this for you and made you believe in yourself?
I mean, that's Paula for me. It really is. You know, Paula, she can be a good saleswoman. I remember going for my, meeting with her when I was deciding if I was going to move to Providence and do it. And she said, my playwrights are always employed. You won't be unemployed if you study with me. And which, but she, I think, was absolutely, I feel like I don't have a career without Paula, because Paula was all about be weird, be shocking, be strange. It was like, no holes barred. And she wasn't grooming us for success on a main stage. She was trying to, get us to be our best selves. And that's hard to come by. And I think I worked with Peter Dubois for a long time for the same reason. He was also, and he was somebody who studied with Paula. He was also kind of unshockable, would go to the dark places, would be delighted to go to them and laugh with you there.
That's so cool.
I think you've had like an early association with Humana in Louisville.
Yeah.
Like, how do you end up there? That was, I so missed that festival. Like, it's hard to believe that I think it's gone, right?
Oh, yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of sent me to bed when that happened. That was a terrible blow, because Humana, God, even as far back as high school, I think, when I would buy monologue books and 10-minute playbooks, I was very aware of it as like the place great American plays start. And so I always had it in mind as, oh gosh, if only I could go to Humana, so it was very, very much on my radar. So I went for it, and I was lucky enough to go twice. And I'll say, I also don't know if I have a career without Humana. I don't know where the new play incubators are right now. I mean, Humana wasn't really an incubator, but they were doing new plays.
So where did Becky Shaw come? As everybody knows, Becky Shaw now running on Broadway in a very well-received production. Where did that come on the trajectory? It's a play that is not new. It's a play you wrote 2 decades ago?
Yeah, I mean, we did it second stage in 2009. I think Humana was 2008 or 7.
Right.
So where did that come in terms of your development as a playwright? It was fairly early, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote at Brown. I wrote, a couple plays that I was not able to get done. And then I wrote my thesis play at Brown was U.S. Drag, which then won the Blackburn, but also didn't get a lot of traction. We did it off Broadway. And I think, I won the Blackburn right around 9/11, and that it was not the post 9/11 play that you want to put on. But so I feel like after that, the next thing I wrote
After Ashley, you did that. That was after U.S. Drag, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote after Ashley. We did it at the O'Neill. We did it at Humana, and it was a big hit at Humana. And I found myself, my response to success is to go into a complete panic that it's all downhill from here. And the next thing I do is just going to prove I'm a fraud. And so Mark commissioned me because he said, I don't think you're going to write another play unless I really push you to do it.
Force you.
And that was Becky Shaw, yeah.
So where did that start with? What is the germ of Becky Shaw? What was the first impulse you had to write this play?
Boy, it's always like, 2 or 3 things floating around in the ether. One of them was this image of the birthday cake dress and what it means to overdress, and the way in which overdressing sort of you lose your power.
It's fascinating.
And I've had that experience of walking in overdressed and people going, oh, like this is important to you. Oh, like, that you show that, and it's kind of horrifying.
It feels also particularly acute in New England, in the Northeast, where you're going to have like very rich people wearing like this really worn out LL Bean, and dressing up is a really faux pas that I think in the South, for instance, might not have the same thing.
Right.
But in New England, it really, dressing up is a much bigger trespass.
Yes.
We should explain. So just to set this up, people will say the birthday dress, what the heck? For those who haven't seen the play, we should just say that the title character is surprisingly evoked, and not necessarily as the play unfolds in its first, half hour or so, not particularly focused on the character of Becky Shaw.
Who's not even there, actually.
Right. Well, I think maybe mentioned because she's coming for a blind date.
Right.
So what Gina's referring to is the dress that Becky Shaw wears in this moment, and that sort of sets up something about who this character is. But I find that fascinating that moment is what sort of like creates this world.
Yeah, it was partly that. I mean, it was also, other things swimming around, one of which was I had a playwright friend who was submitting plays to theaters and getting rejections without explanations. And she was very, very angry about that and felt that she should have a detailed explanation when something is rejected. And I got a little bit fixated on that and started to think of this woman, Becky, who was, requiring that in a romantic situation.
Oh, I love that.
I saw your other plays, but I didn't see the first two, U.S. Dragon After Ashley. But the others in general have this very acerbic tone, often very caustic, this really biting humor. And I wonder, did you lock into that tone early on? It feels very you, in a way.
I definitely, at a certain point, the kind of dark comedy became the genre that appealed to me, and the plays that were absolutely revelatory to me were Nikki Silver's play Pterodactyls absolutely rocked my world, and Paula's play Baltimore Waltz, and a lot of Chris Durang, and that that kind of laughing from a dark place. It was the literature I responded to, and it was sort of how I started to cope in my own life. So that was, I think, where that came from.
Gina, it's funny because I've told people about the play. I've said, I've seen this play. I won't characterize it only because I'm a Tony nominator. And then they say, obviously, the question, what's it about?
Right.
And, I get caught. It's not easily describable. It's intriguingly hard to pin down. And it's like one of those things where you have to just go see it. It's funny. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I wondered if this is a reflection of how these characters evolved for you, if they were people like Max, for example, played by Alden Ehrenreich. Acerbic is the sort of the baseline for that character.
The least we can say about Max, yes.
But did they evolve out of that central conceit of who Becky Shaw is, or do you walk through the garden and pull this one here and that one there and sort of throw them in the room together and see how they live with each other?
I think it is throwing people into a room together, sort of based on my obsessions in that moment. And my other obsession in that moment was, feeling like I was drawn to men who shared all my worst qualities, whether it was just, drinking too much or being just not very generous. And one in particular, we were both so bitter and competitive and weren't happy for our friends when they succeeded. And I was like, I don't want to be that person. And so Becky Shaw, I think is partly about, do you mate with the person you feel kin to, or do you try to, level up morally?
One of the things that I really like about it is that I feel like there's not that many, or not enough to my taste, American plays where class is really a huge part of it. And it really is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Like the reference to the birthday dress, like when Max describes that dress like that, it's really withering. And it really captures not just Becky Shaw, but also him, of course.
Yeah.
And that is very present there. There's also a lot of jokes about using one's status to lord it over others, but also to undermine that and benefit from it if it's like there's a joke at one point about how Becky Shaw can use her story to reapply to Brown and get in.
Yeah.
Because it's all about that. It's all about selling yourself now and using your quote-unquote trauma to your benefit. And I feel like that was really prescient. The play is very ahead of its time in that. Did you do any tweaks to it, or is it pretty much as is?
We did tiny tweaks and we trimmed a little bit, but no, it's not very different.
You said something very interesting, Gina. You said the reflection of parts of yourself in Max, those parts that And it made me wonder, does a playwright have to know themselves very well to be a great playwright? Is that part of it? Is understanding who you are, does that help?
Boy, that's a good question. I think it helps. I think you have to be a good judge of what makes other people tick. I'm just pausing to think, can you be deluded about yourself, but savvy about other people? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought of like what you draw from Gina Gionfriddo to make these people to refract that through these really particular human beings that you create.
Right.
I mean, they are identifiably who they are on stage, which I wonder if that's not a signature of great playwriting, that happens so effortlessly for an audience, that we understand who they are the minute they start talking.
Oh, well, that's a compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's how I felt.
As we say, the humor is very biting and very withering. So how do you gauge how far you can go and making sure that, but we still care about the characters. We still want to know what's going to happen to them. Like you have to make sure that the audience stays with them and involved into what's going to happen. Because like we're not talking like Neil LaBute here, which I think goes into a completely extreme position where I think there's a disdain for the characters sometimes. There's a sense that you're interested in what's going to happen to them and you're invested in what's going to happen to them. Do you feel sometimes like, oh, I should pull back a bit or?
Well, I mean, I feel like part of the reason I haven't, written a new play in 10 years is that the last play I had had a pretty rough reception. And I think it was partly about a protagonist that people really, really didn't like. And I think part of it is if they're fun to hang out with, that's one thing. I think the woman who was the protagonist and the play was called Can You Forgive Her? I think people didn't find her fun to hang out with. So I think it's tricky. And, in having these interviews, I was looking back at, some of the plays that shaped me, and I was looking at Pterodactyls, and there's no way that is a very not nice guy who was the protagonist of that play, and his parents are not nice people.
Yeah, right.
And you go there. Would you go there in 2026? I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Well, but this play, so 2009 to 2026 is a long fallow period.
Yeah.
It was a Pulitzer finalist play. It was very well received, obviously, the first time. It had a great cast. Was this actively being considered over a long period of time to be remounted on a larger platform, or did this come?
Becky?
Yeah.
Boy, there were multiple very serious attempts to take it to Broadway. Sonia Friedman at one point. And what we learned is, it's always been take it to Broadway if we can get an A-list star. And what I learned is stars really don't like ensembles. They really, they want to be the lead. They want to be Hedda Gabler. They want to be Nora in a doll's house. They don't want to be in my ensemble. So, the only reason this happened is that Evan Cabinet was like, I'll program it and we'll worry about star wattage later. And as a nonprofit, they have a little more leeway to do that.
But this is, Linda Emond. I mean, these are actors with a lot of cred. I mean, this is, the actress who plays Becky was on Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
I remember she was great in Handmaid's Tale. She's completely transformed.
Patrick Ball is on one of the hottest shows right now. He's on The Pit. And
yeah, what I've learned is like that fame is it's a funny thing. Like some of it is about who people outside of New York can come into the city for and then tell their friends back home they saw. Like, I think like Mary Jane, for example, my understanding is that at that time, Carrie Coon wasn't considered a big enough star, but Rachel McAdams was. That might not be the case now. She's done some work, but who's famous and who's not, I've found is sometimes I can't sort of anticipate it. But in terms of I wrote Becky and then I did Rapture, Blister, Burn at Playwright.
Oh, right,
which was great.
Yeah, and then Can You Forgive Her? And then a long lapse. But I had my daughter alone in 2011. So definitely a big piece of not writing plays was that I really felt like I needed to focus on finances and to kind of, work in TV as long as the jobs were there for me.
I remember turning on, was it SVU?
No, that's the one I haven't written for, but I've done Law and Order. I've done The Mothership and Criminal Intent.
Yes, because we need to say you have been a pillar of Law and Order. I mean, as a writer, as a producer.
Well, I don't know. So what happened to me is I got hired in the Dick Wolf universe by a showrunner named Renee Balsay, who had come up through
Renee Balsay,
Law and Order, and then he created Criminal Intent and hired me for Criminal Intent. And then he just, I followed him from show to show as he moved around. He went and, they took him over to the Mothership to save the day there. And then he created a show called FBI Most Wanted. And I did that for a couple of years. But I was very, very lucky because he's not your average showrunner. He inspired to greatness. I mean, he wasn't a hack for a paycheck. He wanted Shakespearean stakes. And you don't find that very often in network TV. So that was great.
So how did the transition from stage to Law and Order work? Because clearly you were very good at it, at both. But it's not automatic that someone who can write for the stage can turn to TV or vice versa, by the way. We've seen.
No. And it's, I'm on the council at the Writers Guild, and it's a heartbreak because the climate right now is it's very hard to break in. It's incredibly hard to break in. The climate is sort of, let's, hire for high levels instead of, they're just not jobs for lower levels. I was really mentored into it, and it was good for my playwriting ultimately because it made me a lot less precious about cutting to make meaning clear. I will never, ever forget being on the set at Law and Order and one of the producers was saying, so explain it. And I was like, well, it's this, but it's this, but it's also this. It's his father and his wife. And he said, I have 42 minutes. I can't do scenes from a marriage. He was like, you're going to just have to say it. And I was like, okay, let's say it.
That's great. That's
Golden.
great.
It was not a bad lesson to learn.
It's I wish every listener, aspiring playwright would hear it. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, so I read also that you had a project, because the other problem with TV, an issue with TV is that sometimes you can be stuck in this kind of circling the runway.
Yeah.
For years sometimes, because I read you had a show in development with HBO, I think for 8 or 9 years. What happened with that?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was a screenplay.
A screenplay, okay.
Yeah.
And what, was it just was it caught in bureaucratic madness or what?
They went through so many executives. It would be they were hired and fired so quickly. And it became a situation where they didn't want to do it, but they also wouldn't let it go. And then the thing that happened that was heartbreaking was, I thought it was long dead. And then I got a call, I don't know, just 3 years ago, I think, that HBO had struck an overall deal with the director, Rupert Gould.
Oh.
And they wanted to work with him. And they had showed him a bunch of scripts they had on their shelf. And he liked mine. So they put me and Rupert together and he gave me notes and I did a rewrite and we were all good to go. And then another call when HBO Films was ceasing to exist. It was the executive sort of said to the other producer on the project, if you want to take this somewhere else, do it. But HBO Films really doesn't exist for this kind of movie anymore. It was like a dark true crime comedy-ish story. So it just, but that was a very near brush with getting it made in a great way.
It's amazing that anything gets made, Gina.
Oh, 100%.
I just wanted to ask, the other day we had on Jack O'Brien, who is on The Comeback this season.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And the conceit of the season is that Lisa Kudrow, Valerie Cherish, is cast in a comedy written by AI.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a send-up of this, really scary trend that's happening. And I wondered, is that part of what's happening? I can't parse this, but, when you say that, the lower-level jobs are harder to come by, is AI already a factor? Do you feel this or sense this? Is this what TV writers talk about?
I don't think AI is the issue. I think when streaming arrived, there was a boom that went bust. It was all of the streamers were measuring their success by number of subscribers. So they were making all this content to lure subscribers, but they weren't actually turning a profit.
Interesting.
And at a certain time, they had to be accountable to investors about that. So they really put the brakes on. But all of these young writers joined the Writers Guild in that time because there were so many jobs. And that's over. But I think the fear is it's lesser than the pre-streaming days. It's much darker than when I got into the business. And part of that, I have a 14-year-old. She doesn't watch much scripted. She doesn't.
Wow.
Weirdly, she and her friends are obsessed with Gilmore Girls, which is a very old show. They watch almost no scripted, but somebody's mom showed them Gilmore Girls and they're into Gilmore Girls. So a great show breaks through. But, my deepest, darkest fear is that it's just the generations coming up don't have the same hunger for scripted. That worries me a lot.
So where are they going? What are they going for?
Reality, docu?
Reality, I will catch but my daughter will watch Instagram and TikTok. They have these addictive loops and they figure out what your thing is.
Yeah.
Yes, these verticals too.
And Instagram has figured out that I like sassy toddlers. So they will send me video after video of sassy toddlers, and I can just one after the other. I'm just like, oh my God, give me another. And I think it's a real problem.
My thing is TikTok has figured out that I like call center workers who are taking hostile calls from the public. I can watch 100 of these poor, mostly women, stuck on the phone with insane human beings from entitled, demanding people. Anyway, so I understand that. I get that.
The other thing, my daughter loves SNL. We watch SNL, but those are short.
Right.
The other thing that terrifies me is this concept of second screen viewing that the companies are actually talking about. Shows you can watch as a second screen because you're on your phone.
Oh, I see. Amazing.
And I forget who recently was talking about getting notes from one of the streamers about you got to repeat the facts periodically because people are half watching. And that's terrifying because if it only has to be so good, AI can write it. I don't think AI can write great, but if it doesn't have to be great, then they're competition.
Second screen viewing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to weep.
I know. Oh, I know.
Yeah. And I feel like your writer's sensibility, at least in your plays, is so ready for the times we live in. And do you feel they're inspiring to you or just so crushingly depressing that you can't even deal with trying to engage with them?
Well, I don't know. I actually have, worried a little bit about my voice for these times because I do think, everybody hates the term wokeness, but I feel like we did come to a certain kinder, gentler place. And I've seen it with my daughter, things are labeled toxic, they're labeled bullying very, very quickly. One of the other loops I have on Instagram, I get a lot of Sacha Baron Cohen stuff, which I show my daughter, which she doesn't think is funny because he's tricking people, he's bullying them.
Right.
So I sort of, when we were putting Becky Shaw up, I think we were all worried that that there was a certain gleeful meanness that was maybe a thing of the past, but the audiences seem to be okay with it.
Has your daughter seen it?
Yes, she loved it. Yeah, which I was very surprised.
Not too mean for her then.
No.
And they're honest at 14. They tell you if they don't like it.
Yeah.
But Susan Slater, the character that Linda Eamon plays is, completely politically incorrect by our standards. So I do understand, but you didn't feel like you needed to tamp down some of her more outrageous statements? You did.
We didn't tamp down some. We took one out, but then we also added a line for Lauren Patton's character where she says, could you answer my questions in a less offensive way? Where she's just so the audience needs to know that the playwright's heart is in the right place.
Oh, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
And that the other characters are aware also of what's going on, or that the Lauren Patton character is aware.
Yeah. One of the things that was tricky about Can You Forgive Her was that, and God love Amber Tamblyn because she went with it. And when the reviews were hateful toward the play. She kept right on going and didn't doubt the words. So I'm indebted to her. But her character was kind of, blithely racist and not very nice. And we had some people walk out, and I remember thinking, like, if you just stick around, she will be reduced to nothing in the end. She will be humiliated. She will, but you got to go on the journey.
Right.
And that play, the timing was also awkward. Trump had just been elected. I think people were like, it was a little bit zero tolerance in the audiences, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing how much timing. I mean, of course, we have no control over it, but it cannot be underestimated.
No, I mean, I also, as a young playwright, this Susan Smith Blackburn Prize was like the grail to me. It was the ticket to everything. And then, I won it with a dark comedy right around 9/11. So, yeah, timing's everything.
So you've had this, the rebirth of the playwriting career of Gina Gionfriddo on Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
Are you now swiveling back? Are you thinking now stage-wise, or is this a blip on another trajectory?
No, I mean, so TV work has been very, very scarce. I think the industry is in a really rough place, but we had a long strike, and then I wasn't getting TV work. After that, there was this massive contraction. So I wrote 2 plays, and now we're, in the process of, pushing those rocks up the hill,
That makes me very happy.
Yeah.
And also, okay, can you tell us a little bit, because you still working on the Silence of the Lambs adaptation? Okay, can you tell us a bit about that? Like, how did you end up getting involved with that?
So it was British producers who wanted to do it in the West End. They had gotten the rights to the book, but not the film. And my agent knew them through a different project and submitted me, and they responded to my work. And, I met with them, and it was one of the great things about it was that they just had the rights to the book and not the movie. So it was like anything original to the movie I couldn't touch. And they wanted it to be scary, and they wanted it to be a scary story about the relationship between Lecter and Clarice. So I got to use a lot of stuff from the book that, there wasn't time for in the movie. So that's been incredibly fun. They wanted to do it in the West End with 2 stars, and they were able to get a woman. They were not able to get a man. I don't know. I think they were surprised. I'm not so surprised. I think there's hesitancy around that role. I don't know if it feels like, it's so defined by another actor. So we're doing it as a touring production. It's going to open in Leicester this summer at Curve. And then it's going to tour UK and Ireland for the next.
Who's directing?
Nikolai Foster, the artistic director of Curve.
I'm so excited about that project.
Yeah.
I love genre theater, and I love the interest in horror and scary theater, and just going for it. I've long said that, like, anybody who writes like a rom-com for Broadway will just print money, like a real rom-com, like a real that obeys to the codes. And I feel the same about a good horror or suspense or thriller on stage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm dying to see Paranormal Activity.
I loved it. Yeah.
Because it's hard to do scary in theater.
Totally.
Really hard. How do you approach that, actually? Because you're going to have to do scary for Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, well, you have to think about it in terms of, like, what you don't see versus, because you can't do the...
Right.
You can't show because, you don't have the resources to do that. But yeah, it becomes more about, what's hidden and what's psychically, existentially scary.
Yeah, I remember seeing Let the Right One In London, Jack Thorne.
Yeah.
And it was terrifying. And it was, they did it in New York. It wasn't as, I don't know why, it wasn't as terrifying, but it was that idea of creating terror more than horror. Horror looks schlocky on stage. It just does. It looks artificial, but terror, dread. For me, I know Elizabeth is rolling her eyes, but for me, anyway.
I like both.
Yeah, I haven't seen much great horror on stage.
It's hard. It's hard to do well.
Yeah. But terror, that feeling, if you can touch that nerve with people, I can see where. Yeah. And well, Silence of the Lambs is just an amazing piece. So I'm eager to see what you do with it.
Yeah, and we're going to go over there in July. I'm excited.
Fantastic.
This is great. Well, oh my God, Gina, thank you so much. I was so happy to see Becky Shaw. I had missed it the first time around, and I was just so happy to finally be able to see it. I'm a big fan of your work, and I feel like your voice is so idiosyncratic in American theater.
Oh, thank you.
And it just feels very, like, so in sync with the moment with that you actually trying to be, I think. Yeah, I like this caustic humor that I'm not really seeing much otherwise.
No, there used to be a lot when I was coming up.
Yes. Nikki Silver is a perfect example.
Yeah, you're right. Nikki Silver.
Yeah.
I mean, when you brought him up, I was like, oh my God, of course. Absolutely. And we have not seen him on the New York stage in a very long time.
No, we haven't.
Too long.
Well, it's exciting to hear you, Gina, talk about these other plays that you've written. As you can tell, we both eat up news of your theatrical work. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Peter, I really love it when we have writers on the show. Like, we've had so many great ones, like that, to me, on a super nerdy level. That is probably, I love actors too, but like the writers, maybe because it's on a very modest level, I'm one too. I'm really interested in how they come up with stuff. Because I'm completely unable to write fiction, by the way.
Playwrights are incredibly smart people. They just are. They're incredibly smart people. And they have to master so many skills beyond sitting in front of a laptop and pounding out a dialogue. So yes, I agree with you. It's joyful to speak to these really smart people and have them come on and share their knowledge and share that with listeners. It's a privilege to hear that. Anyway, that's it for this episode. You'll find us right here on marksvincentelli.substack.com and on Instagram at Marks and Vincentelli. And of course, we both have accounts on social media. Although, social media is not a great place for theater exchanges. There's just not that many people who engage on theater topics.
It's true. I don't understand why. Maybe I'm not finding them. I'm really largely on Blue Sky these days, and it's very tricky to... I think aren't you more on Threads and Facebook?
Yeah, I'm more on Threads and Facebook, but even there, it's just very hard to unless it's somebody or a topic that's in the news, it's very hard to... I do actually find more on Facebook in terms of getting people to react to theater items than Threads.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Oh. Well, and thanks to our crack team, Robin Sunderland, who handles our Instagram page, despite the fact that we're like so not
Instagrammy.
Ready for the Instagrammy. She has fortitude. And Adam Gold, the producer who makes us sound smart. Thanks to basically like what you hear is the way we recorded it. Like there's so few edits, we're really flying. We have a net, and that's Adam, but we'd rather brave infamy and ridicule than just like make stuff up as we go along. So thank you for listening, and we'll be back very soon.